All right, welcome back, baseball fans. This is an eliminating the Baltimore Orioles video. They got all the way to the League Championship Series, only to lose to the Detroit Tigers 4 games to 2. They did knock out the Oakland A's. Maybe that took too much out of their sails there. The 71 Orioles went to the World Series, beating the Oakland A's in the playoffs, but both teams neither made it to the World Series as Detroit slips in there in between the crack there. Here are the stats. Baltimore, typical, great pitching, okay offense team. Offense abandoned them in the Detroit series. They could not figure out Mickey Lolich or Joe Coleman, and it cost them, folks. Looking at the performances, interesting some players here. Leroy Stanton had a rather fantastic year as a platoon outfielder, just against left-handed pitching in right field, replacing Don Baylor with much better defense and a much better arm. And he did a decent job, very decent job on the platoon there. Probably could have been given the everyday job. That's because guys like Merv Retman and Frank Robinson, and they're not here. Tommy Davis isn't here either. Al Bunbury hit 321 with that Rookie of the Year card. The big star, of course, Brooks Robinson, delivered a great year, probably better than the MVP of the World Series in '70. His '71 year, he had 20 bombs against right-handed pitching. Power, average, on base, and of course the Gold Glove. Buford did a fine job leading off. Echebarren, Bobby Grich, 378 on base with some power. Boog Powell had a slow start. Both him and Earl Williams back-to-back there. Both those guys had slow starts. Then they finally just decided to tag the long ball, put the foot in the bucket, and just start hacking out there. They hacked away to 24 combined home runs. Unfortunately, both players are going to find their futures are going to be a little bit more challenging as they get older. Paul Blair had a terrible year, which is a shame, hitting 212. And then, there's a point where Tom Shapay and Wine, you bring in defensive players, but enough's enough. 0.75 out of Bobby Wine is probably the worst batting performance I may have ever had. Let's just get to pitching. Palmer got the Cy Young, 5 complete games, 128 innings, 9-6. Unfortunately, he got hurt in one of the league championships starts. Perhaps he might have beaten Mickey Lolich if allowed to continue. It didn't happen. That's really bad luck. Baltimore suffered a lot of bad luck in that series. Maybe next year they can find some younger players to add to this team to get better. They're still going to have Palmer, Cuellar, McNally, and if you look at all those guys, they were 24-14, 9-8-7 wins. Milt Pappas did a serviceable job when called upon. The bullpen was fantastic. Bob Reynolds, Billy Wilson, Horland that got in an off-season deal. Grant Jackson, the closer, had 10 saves with a really weird worst ERA on the team at 378, but a lot of that happened in the one game against Detroit where he gave up 3 runs in a third of an inning. So now we can just take a look at the Baltimore Oriole card set. We're going to pull out their 71 players, which is World Series players. So this could be a very disappointing elimination for Baltimore, as they could sort of see the historic writing on the wall that they're not really going to get an invitation to another World Series until they change their cast in the late 70s, early 80s. Find some young bloods. Find some young talent out of their farm system there, as they're going to lose some really nice guys from the 71 team. Here are the 12 players they will bring back next year. And they're going to go heavy with pitching, which for Baltimore is probably a good thing. So let's take a look at these 6 hitters that are coming back. We don't have a catcher. We don't have a first baseman. We got Bobby Grich at second. And we have Frank Duffy presently at short. Presently, I say that. And we have a bunch of outfielders. 2 are lefty and 2 are righty. You can put, of course, Blair can play center. You can put Bunbury in left. You can put Leroy Stanton and make these guys platoon in right field. These 2 guys, though you might as well just get rid of this guy. Not very good for a team with World Series aspirations. But then when you look at the pitching, you might change your mind. You will bring back Palmer. You will bring back Cuellar's magnificent 72. So if you're wondering, you can look this up. Baltimore's pitching was better in 72 when they didn't go to the World Series. They pitched better because their offense was horrible, and they had to pitch better. The offense propped up the Orioles in 69, 70, and 71, but in 72 it completely vanished. That's when they let Frank Robinson go. But you got Palmer, Cuellar. You did bring in Milt Pappas, brought him back. Remember, Pappas went to Cincinnati for Robinson in the 60s. They brought him back with his 72 Cubs card. This is the card that threw a no-hitter against the Padres. Should have been a perfect game. And then in the bullpen, we have Joe Horlin. This is a good get because he's an Oakland pitcher in 72 for the Dynasty A's. So the fact that you have them is a good thing, not Oakland. But it doesn't matter. Look at the back end here. These two guys, both from 73. I talked about 72. The best back end is Pittsburgh. Ramon Hernandez and Dave Justy with similar ERAs. 73, the best back end are these two guys. And in 73, the Orioles came back and won the American League East after missing out in 72. The pitching staff right here, and you just want to add two more guys. You do have the rights to Dave McNally. And so if you add McNally again, I'm assuming, you're right back to a playoff contender, but you're going to need some better bats if you really want to be a World Series contender. So let's go take a look. And this is a big moment for the Baltimore Orioles. 69, 70, and 71 World Series teams are over with. And this is the first time we've seen Baltimore going downhill a little bit. I mean, they're going to slide a little bit. So let's see what they can do to avoid that slide. All right, folks, we're going to take a look at the 8 players, from 71 that Baltimore has to decide what they're going to do moving forward. The first of which is Buford, who, of course, the catalyst of the 69, 70, 71 Orioles, the top of the lineup. But then, in 72, again, most of Baltimore's hitters had a slump. And I believe Buford is 35 years old, and he hit that slump, folks. He hit 206, the 593 OPS for what is a corner outfielder with not much speed or power. So, that is just not going to get it done. But Baltimore's in a precarious position here. The good news is Buford will continue a career with 400 plate appearances, but it could very well be for his final year that the Orioles put him on waivers because of performance, and he gets picked up by one of the expansion teams in this league. So they're going to waive Buford because the Orioles you have to look at the bigger picture here. You have to bridge the 69 to 71 dynasty and try and get it into the closer towards that 77 to 83 area when Eddie Murray comes along and Cal Ripken would come along prior to that. So Buford is not going to be part of the future, looks like. Next player, Echeverren. Now, Echeverren also, this is sort of like, do you just tank a season the next year and just let all these guys go, and then maybe just bring in a bunch of young guys? So here he is. He's got 3 more years in Baltimore from 72 to 74. And actually in 73, he's reasonably good. He has a 686 OPS. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this analysis by making him a keeper, because that's nice value for a catcher. But if they find that there are too many guys to be kept, and you can only keep 4 guys, if he's the 5th wheel, he can be moved to waivers or traded. All right, next player is Boog Powell. Now he'll stick around. Boog will stick around. There's an interesting little performance thing here that happens that is a curious we're just going to take a look at address this now. So 71's over. He had the good range. He still had 22 homers. He had a 379 on base and an 839 OPS. But he's going to start to decline until in 75, at age 33, that age where players start to go south, it's just the opposite. Boog Powell rediscovers his stroke in Cleveland in 1975. Now, isn't that interesting? Because Baltimore traded Frank Robinson to Cleveland last year. And then Boog Powell goes to Cleveland in 75. 27 dingers, a 297 average, 901, 20 MVP votes. So, that is pretty, that's a pretty cool performance. So, Baltimore could simply hold on to him with these other performances here. 21 homers in 72. With a 434 slugging. That's not too bad. But they could also talk to Cleveland and say, if you want Boog Powell for that performance, you're going to have to give up some young Cleveland player like a George Hendrick or a Oscar Gamble. Somebody like that. Some rather enticing player for an aging Boog Powell who has one good year out of 4 coming up. We'll put a note to trade, but he's a keeper for now. And again, this conversation could be tabled for the next 3 years. You know, Powell could play for Baltimore with these other cards until this 75 discussion comes up. So we don't have to do it this offseason. The more you delay it, though, the minimum impact you get. So anytime you see a great year 4 years out in the future, you should go get that year so you have it 4 years. That's 4 years of Boog Powell hitting almost 300 with 27 homers. Why wait and have it done once? This is how you maximize the efficiency in your carryover league. You look for outlier years, 4 years in the future for players who play in the game for a long time, such as the next guy, Brooks Robinson. So Brooksy, he has some kind of interesting numbers in this timeline. So we used the Great 71 card for Brooksy, and the reason was, in 71, he had 20 bombs. Most of this is against right-handed pitching, which is great. So the slugging's 413, but he was close to slugging 450, 500 versus righties. He didn't have power versus lefties. So that's slugging, the 92 RBIs, and you saw how great Brooksy played in this season with that card. But now, moving forward, he's got some interesting numbers coming up. He actually has a batting average year in 74. His highest batting average is in 74 at 288. Highest batting average since 64 when he was the MVP, as a matter of fact. The problem, though, he only has 7 home runs in a full season. Well, he couldn't hit for power anymore, so he started spraying the ball around and then, you know, and hitting and running. And you combine that with the Gold Glove, and he was 12th in MVP votes in 74. That Oriole team won the division. So, yeah, obviously Brooksley's coming back, and, you know, he has 8, 9, and 7 homers. So you may as well go with the best batting average for a 3-year contract. So that's how we analyze Brooksy. So 4 players. Actually, Buford was an Oriole, but we're gonna waive him because there's still more guys coming here. And this guy is intriguing to say the least. It's Earl Williams. What does Baltimore do with this guy? So Baltimore fans would say that Earl was a disappointment when he came to Baltimore. Obviously, that little ballpark in Atlanta helped him in 1971. This is the season for a catcher. 33 homers for a catcher not named Johnny Bench, which is fantastic. A 260, 491 slugging, rookie of the year. He has another year in 72, and then Baltimore makes the trade. His numbers came down a little bit in 72 to 28 homers and 258. And then when Baltimore got him in their park, the numbers came down again to 22 homers and 237. He never really did well, and then they sent him back to Atlanta by 1975. While this was happening, Davey Johnson would hit 43 home runs in Atlanta. And that card is currently on an Atlanta Braves team that was the #1 seed in the National League. It's a sunk cost to go through the, say you can improve upon a catcher. You really aren't. You're going to get, if you bring up this 72 card, he's going to hit 28 home runs. I really think you have to keep Earl Williams. I mean, who lets go of a catcher who hit 28 home runs, right? Just because he's not as good as he once was, that's something else. But there aren't too many catchers who hit 21 homers or 22 homers just sitting on the benches somewhere. Plus, we talked about Baltimore needing offense, and well, that's offense. Might not be as good as it once was, but it's still offense. All right, the last guy on the offensive side is Bobby Wine, and boy, this was awful. The only reason they brought Bobby Wine on is because they didn't have Belanger. Belanger was signed away, and he hit 271. You see there, but he hit 075 for the Orioles, and I don't think they make this card in 72 for the Expos. We can look that up. They probably aren't going to make that card for Montreal for Bobby Wine. We'll look it up here in the roster sheet. No, so we'll retire Bobby Wine. All right, now the two pitchers. Okay, first guy, Dave McNally. Now he's part of the big three, but you know he's gonna run out of gas soon, folks. I mean, he's fantastic, but there's a steep cliff he falls off of here. Let's examine the stats closely. So 72. Don't look at this one-loss record. You know, the 20-game seasons are for a team with plenty of offense. 13 and 17, but the pitching was fantastic. He did a great job on the mound. He just didn't get any support for the first time in a while at age 29. In 73, the cracks appear. His whip is highest it's been. And in 74, the Expos should have seen this regression, but they didn't. The Expos traded for him for Kenny Singleton. And that was a terrible trade. So what we could do is, we could have the Expos trade for him, but get him sooner when he still has some life left in his arm. And Baltimore could get Kenny Singleton to add to that outfield that needs some offense. So there's a reasonable chance that we will recreate a McNally and Singleton trade with the parameters being changed, of course. They won't be exactly as they were, and we'll make it a fair trade. We do this with all the big trades in the 70s, that when we find a Tom Seaver going to the Reds, or Joe Morgan going to the Reds, or like we just had, like I said, Davey Johnson going to the Braves. So we try and create balance. Right now, McNally is a keeper on a team that has too many of them. But with trade coming up, there's a team that could afford to trade a pitcher. Baltimore can. And if it's a left-handed pitcher, they could get their hands on Ross Grimsley, who pitched for the Reds and Orioles. They do have a young Scott McGregor coming up soon. They have a Mike Flanagan coming up soon. So it's not out of the question for McNally to be dealt sooner. Last pitcher is Billy Wilson, who pitched for the Phillies. He was a toss-in in the Grant Jackson trade with Pat Dobson that we did. Oh, there's a bunch of them. We want this one. So he pitched for the Phillies. And 71, he had a heck of a year with a 104 whip. 72 is much better than 73. He only pitched 30 innings. So we need to see if he has a card in 72 with the Phillies. And here's their extra pitchers. He's not there. And let's look up here. And he's not there. So unfortunately, it's a real shame here for Bill Wilson. Even though he has 2 years left in his career, Strat-O-Matic in this original first edition set did not print those 30 innings. They printed, I believe, yeah, I kind of remember this one. They did print the 73 card, but he's awful. So I think Baltimore's just going to retire him. They need to retire our second guy anyway. So Bill Wilson will be retired. And in this offseason for Baltimore, it looks like they're going to keep Earl Williams because they have to get something out of that deal with Davey Johnson. He's going to hit for power. Etchebarren, Williams is 2 catchers, so I don't know how they're going to play that. Brooks Robinson. But you do see they have 2 trade targets here. Of these, I think I'm going to hold on to Boog Powell. I just might want to hold on to him and trade McNally and see if you get Kenny Singleton for him. You wouldn't need Leroy Stanton anymore. Plus, you could make Singleton a DH, or actually, you could make Bunbury a DH. But Buford's going to be gone out of corner outfield slot. So a corner outfield slot will open up. You have Bunbury, Leroy Stanton, and of course, I think Tom Chopay is still on this team. But you'd like to get a guy like Ken Singleton in here sooner than later for Baltimore. And that'll do it for eliminating the Orioles. Hope you're enjoying these elimination videos. We'll see you next time.